And now, from our Fox studios in New York, it's Judith Regan Tonight.
A fatherless home, writes my first guest, is a dangerous place. A fatherless home with an absentee mother can seem like it's missing a roof and a floor, like four shaky walls barely fixed to the ground, a door without locks blowing open and closed, letting in far too many strangers. Without protection, you can't quite be children. Without someone to guard you against danger alongside another who's warming the nest, childhood innocence is lost. If ever you had a question about what children go through when their father leaves home, if ever you want to understand the terrifying confusion and loneliness of a boy growing up fatherless, then you need to read this stunning book. It's called The Boy He Left Behind, A Man's Search for His Lost Father. Father, he writes, means nothing but absence to me. The word itself is a kind of black hole, sucking up what's familiar around it. It leaves me feeling mute and disjointed. The last time my guest saw his father was on the day his father tried to kidnap him. He was 4 years old at the time, and he spent a lifetime trying, in so many ways, to find that lost father. His book is the story of that journey, and it painfully recounts the inner and outer journey of an all-too-familiar story these days. The lone boy in search of father, in search of that mythic man who will guide him from boyhood to manhood. He's the author of the international bestseller, Sex, Death, Enlightenment, and his newest book, The Boy He Left Behind, is a must-read. It's my pleasure to welcome Mark Matousek. Hello.
Hello.
Now, this book is breathtaking.
Thank you.
It really is breathtaking. And I want to start with the line I used in the introduction, a fatherless home is a dangerous home. Talk to me about that.
Well, I was the only male in a house full of women, and troubled women. My mother was a very difficult person, and my sisters had their array of problems, so I felt like I needed to hold the place together somehow. But I was a kid and didn't know how to do that, so I grew up with a sense of panic, that it was all falling apart, it was all going to go away if I didn't somehow become a man, but I didn't know how to do that.
With all these women running around.
With all these women running around, and I was a kid.
Right. You have beautiful, beautiful passages about the breasts and the female stuff and being surrounded by all that.
Right, feeling like the lone sperm in the house, sort of swimming around this humongous egg.
Right.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Tell me just what happened with your father and between your father and your mother and how they broke.
Well, my mother and father never should have been married. They met accidentally. I was conceived almost immediately. And they were lost souls, both of them in their own ways. She had been married once. This was in the late 50s. She had 2 daughters from a previous marriage. And she in those days, a woman without a husband was a second-class citizen. So and my father was a drifter. We never knew where he came from. We never found out where he ended up. And so they collided, really, and grabbed
on the bathroom floor, apparently.
Alas.
Where you were conceived.
Alas, yeah.
How do you get that bit of information?
Well,
is that like a little bit of mythology in the family, or
not really? It was a process of deduction. Yeah, I was told details and pieced it all together. And my older sisters told me things, and so my parents never really belonged together, and they had a short, really tumultuous marriage, and then he came back to kidnap me one night.
When you were 4?
When I was 4, yeah.
And what happened? Because that's how you opened the book.
Yeah, I was watching TV. I was watching Ed Sullivan with my 3 sisters. My younger sister was just a baby, and I heard his truck drive up. He had been gone for a few weeks. And a lot of this is fuzzy, and it's stuff I've been told, and I remember certain images very vividly. I heard his truck. I went to the window. I got very excited. My sisters got in front of the door and wouldn't let me get out. He came up. He kicked in the door. He grabbed me and ran for the car. My mother was next door playing cards with her girlfriends. She came out screaming, grabbed me by my feet. My father grabbed me by my hands, and they pulled me apart, and she kicked him, and he dropped me. She ran in the house and locked the door, and that was it. I went to the window and I watched him leave, and that's the last thing I ever heard from him.
Never ever had any contact?
No, none at all. No.
And yet you spent many, many years and a lot of time and energy searching for him.
Actually, it's a strange thing. I did this on a dare. Like a lot of people, I think, who lose parents or loved ones or siblings, you try to put it behind you, and it becomes a scar that you want to heal. So I didn't think about it. When I brought him up, my mother told me he was probably dead. I wasn't the kind of son he would have wanted. So I never really seriously considered looking for him until I was in my 30s. I was having lunch with a friend, and he dared me, literally dared me to do it. And I thought, that's crazy. Why would I do it? I don't care about finding a father. And before I knew it, he had given me the name of a detective. I said, what the hell? And that's how it started. But it was really, it was a kind of a lark. It sounds strange to say, but the only reason I had the courage to look is that I was sure I wouldn't find him.
Were you afraid of what you might find?
Yes, I was. From what I'd been told, he was a very difficult, troubled person. I didn't think he would like me. It caused an uproar in my family because my mother almost stopped speaking to me when I decided to look for him.
Why?
Well, she had a lot of very, very painful memories. She never forgave him for leaving us. He never paid child support. She raised 4 kids on her own.
All right, we're going to get into that when we come back, but we have to take a break. We'll be back with the author of The Boy He Left Behind, Mark Matousek, when we return. In clinical... We're back with the best-selling author, Mark Matousek, whose new book is called The Boy He Left Behind. I want to talk about being a boy in a house full of sisters and having the single mother, and having a single mother who's, in your mother's case, looking for love and looking to have her own life and having a lot of problems herself, and what burden that places on you, and what went through your mind having that kind of a mother. Well,
it was a two-sided thing. On the one hand, she was in love with a married man for 15 years, and every Tuesday night he would come, he'd pull up to the curb in his Lincoln Continental and honk the horn, and she'd go running out to him and spend the night with him and come back the next morning miserable and spend the rest of the week waiting for the day that he would come and see her. So on the one hand, I was angry about it, and on the other, I knew that she really loved him. You know, even as a child, as children know their parents' hearts. You just have to look at your parents' face to know what's going on, or to the sound of their voice. And when she was with him, or had been with him, or talked about him, she seemed happy. It was the only time she seemed truly happy. And so I wanted her to be happy on the one hand, but the thing that was making her happy was making us miserable, and it had actually driven my father away. So it's a
that relationship?
Yes, it's a schizoid kind of thing.
So he left because she was having an affair with a married man?
That's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to give away the end of the book, but something happens, I find out a big secret.
Now, see, now this is very interesting because you do deal with that issue in the book, that he gets angry, he leaves, she's having an affair. And we talked about this in a meeting yesterday, and several of the people said, well, you know, I don't blame him. And I said, no, wait a minute. You know, how many men have had affairs, you know, the fathers of my children? You don't leave your children just because they're having an affair.
That's right.
You know, and yet, the abandoned child, and in this case you, always seems to make excuses in one way or another for the abandoning parent. Yeah,
yeah, that is true.
Do you feel that you've done that in some respects? That
I did, and what happened in the course of writing the book is that I broke my own mythology open. I had this idea, for instance, that I wanted to go away with him when he left. That was the idea I grew up with. I thought like my mother was my ball and chain, all these women, and if I had gone and been a free man, I would have grown up differently. And that's one myth that got broken open, because in the course of the book, my mother becomes ill, and I realized how much I loved her, and our relationship was deeply healed. So given the choice, actually, I would have stayed with her, which is something I didn't know. I wouldn't have known had I not looked for my father. But I did. I thought, well, she's crazy. Why wouldn't he leave? There are times I wanted to ditch the family. So I would, you know, in my mind, he was this hero figure who had gotten away. He was the man who got away.
The ones who get away always become the heroes.
They become larger than life.
The ones who stay and do the work and say, did you do your homework? Did you brush your teeth?
Yeah, they're the bad guys.
They get demonized,
That's right, that's right, that's right. So
and it's usually the mother.
Yeah, yeah.
Now I want to talk about that. 26% of families in America now are single mothers raising children without fathers present, without fathers being involved with their children's lives, which is a big, big number. Is it possible for a woman to raise a boy to manhood by herself and to a good manhood?
Yes, it's certainly possible, but it's very important for young boys to have male role models around them in some capacity. It doesn't have to be the biological father, it doesn't have to be the mother's partner. They don't even have to be in the house. But I know one of the things that I missed growing up very, very much was an example of what an evolved, mature, together, happy man looked like.
And you know what? You could have missed it with him in the house,
That's
too.
true. That's true. That's certainly true.
You know,
Yeah.
I think a lot of boys miss that. I mean, I think that that is one of the central problems in America today.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
The
we
whole
do.
issue.
People have said we live in a fatherless culture.
We do. Fatherless and manliness-less.
Exactly, exactly. Real manhood.
Real manhood. We're going to talk about being a real man when we come back. Don't go away. We're back with Mark Matousek, the author of The Boy He Left Behind, A Man's Search for His Lost Father. And I want to read a quote, which is the epigram of the book. The deepest search in life, it seemed to me, the thing that in one way or another was central to all living, was man's search to find a father, not merely the father of his flesh, not merely the lost father of his youth, but the image of a strength and wisdom external to his need and superior to his hunger, to which the belief and power of his own life could be united. That's Tom Wolfe, and that's the quote that you start the book with.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that what you discovered when you went to look for your father?
Well, did I discover it? The reason I put that quote there is that I've been on a kind of spiritual path for many years looking for what I thought was enlightenment, but still feeling a deep emptiness inside me. And when I came across that quote, I realized that that describes exactly what people are looking for in God. What they think of as God is this power superior to themselves, equal to their hunger, protective, etc. And I saw that there was a connection between the hunger for a father and the hunger for a spiritual figure, whether it be God or Jesus or Buddha, or whatever you want to call it. So did I find it? I realized that what I realized writing this book was that no one was ever going to come back and save me. That's really what I realized. It wasn't no guru, no priest, no rabbi, and not my father. That to be a man really was about taking my own initiative and becoming my own support, my own power, and not in a narcissistic way, but in an adult way, and in a grown-up male way.
Now, I often ask people the question, what made you the man that you are?
Yeah.
Is the search for your father, and I mean that sort of metaphorically as well as sort of literally, is the search for your father what made you the man that you are in some ways? Did it, not having a father, shape you as much as a human being as maybe having a father would have?
It did. It did. For instance, my mom was someone who was very stoical, and basically what she gave us was tough love. Stand up for yourself, do it on your own, no one's going to do it for you. And I had a very powerful father. For instance, I might have grown up, like a lot of kids do, feeling sort of castrated and weakened by the image of a father I could never compete with. So I didn't have that. And I think it made me independent, and I think it made me self-motivated and self-driven.
Have you, as a child, as a teenager, let's talk about the teenage years, because those are very difficult years for young men and young women. What did you go through when...
Oh, I was a mess. I was rebel without a cause. I was mad at the world. I was looking for every way I could escape sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I didn't have a clue how to make the transition from being the kid in the family, the little boy in the family, to being a man in the world. That's one of the things that a father traditionally does, is provides a bridge between the son and the world, entering the world, whether it be into career or education or relationships. And not having that, I didn't know how. So I was crazy. I was in jail 3 times before I was 18. I came very close to killing myself, not deliberate suicide, but just because I was over the edge.
Yeah, but if we look at prisons today, something like 90% of the men in prison had no fathers.
Yes, absolutely.
Which should tell us something.
Yes, yes, it does tell you a lot.
That boys need men.
Yes, and it's not just human beings. Did you know that elephants who lose when there are no bull elephants in the herd, the young males go insane and ransack villages and kill people and attack one another. There's something about having a presiding male force in a society that holds it together.
Amazing. Shocking. What about, now this fascinated me too. Your sister gave up a child for adoption.
Mm-hmm.
That child came back to find her.
Yes, yes.
At the same time that you were trying to find your father.
Yeah, yeah.
What happened there?
Well, it was not a happy story.
Mm-hmm.
She got pregnant when she was 14 and a half. When I remember, as a kid, I was only, what, about 6, I think.
Mm-hmm.
She disappeared. My mother had sent her to a home for unwed mothers during her pregnancy and after she gave birth. And so I never knew really what had happened until her daughter found her. And her daughter had actually been adopted by a very religious Jewish family. And when she met my sister, it wasn't a match.
It didn't match the fantasy.
It didn't match the fantasy, and my sister is a very free spirit, mm-hmm. and her daughter was a Hasidic Jew, mm-hmm. her biological daughter. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't have a relationship. They met. She was so excited about meeting Joyce, and then, but it didn't click.
And so they never saw each other?
They saw one another, but the girl did not stay in touch.
Is blood thicker than water?
In a certain way, I think it is. Yeah, there are a limited small number of people who are your family, for better or worse. And
what is that urge to try to find the biological parent? What is that about?
It's about knowing who you are and where you come from and what your actual material roots are in the world. Mm-hmm. Especially today, because so many of us feel so fractured and fragmented and disjointed, and the world is so nuts, that we need something to hold on to. And family is something that a lot of us have lost in different ways. And I know I grew up feeling like half of me was missing. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know, why did other people seem so grounded, and I always felt like I only had one foot on the ground. I felt like half of me was always leaving, half of me was somewhere in shadow. And when I looked for my father, I realized I made the connection. It seems obvious, but I hadn't actually put it together before.
Do you still feel that way?
No, I feel more grown up. I grieved. Part of this process of looking for him was grieving for having not had him.
Right.
Because I put it in the closet and I shut the door, I had never let myself feel how sad it was that there was never a father to grow up with.
There's a beautiful quote, another one that you use, and let me get my glasses on because the type is so small I can't read it. You will begin to forgive the world when you forgive your father. This is Tennessee Williams, psychiatrist.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that what happened to you?
I think so. I think, I'm still in the process of forgiving the world and forgiving myself. I mean, it never ends. It's not as if...
But did you forgive your father for abandoning you?
I think that I came to a deeper understanding of how it happened, because in the course of... The book was as much about a healing within the family and with my mother. Ironically, it's a love poem to my mother.
Yeah. You learned to love your mother, and you learned to appreciate everything she did for you.
I did.
The Boy He Left Behind. Thanks so much.